Supernatural is a show that means a lot to me, and I would assume a lot to everyone who clicked on this video. It's a show about hunting monsters, demons, angels, demigods, but beyond all else, it's a show about family and faith. And the way that the show handles faith has always been fascinating to me. You see, Supernatural isn't just a show that uses religion in its plots. I'd argue at times, oftentimes, Supernatural is a show about religion. Going back as early as season 1, there are moments that beg you to think and consider how these characters feel about the world that they reside in. How can a character who hunts demons and monsters for a living, who knows that demons killed his own mother, even begin to fathom that God wouldn't exist? Conversely, what about his brother? Someone who went through the same experiences, does the same things, but came to a completely different outcome. What does it say about the life that these two shared growing up? Slowly, over time, we watch characters change their beliefs on the fly, develop new ideas, and persevere when all odds were against them. All the while, the show is asking you what you believe. Faith, destiny, religion, free will, these are all fluid and important themes in Supernatural, the very essence of the show. And today I want to talk about that faith and how I think Supernatural never lost it, even when it killed God. I've broken down Supernatural into eras before based on showrunners, and I think it's never been more important to that than it is now. You see, while it is just one show with consistent theming and concepts, the show's thoughts and ideas surrounding religion evolved with each showrunner, not just in the ideas presented, but the way the show handled these aspects as storytelling devices. The early seasons of Supernatural under the reign of Kripke handled and treated religion as a mere extension of the supernatural itself. Oftentimes, the show would shy directly away from showing anything overtly religious. Season 1, episode 12, Faith, one of my favorite episodes of the show, exemplifies this completely. Dean is mortally wounded on a hunt, and fearing that he could lose his brother, Sam dives into his own faith to find an answer, stumbling upon a faith healer. This faith healer ultimately is utilizing a reaper to kill other people to save people. Sam's faith in the divine, in religion, in a god, in a higher power is flipped on him. He realizes that it's something deadly and dangerous. Somebody using religion for money, power, and fame. It's heartbreaking, but it's told in a way that feels real and manages to ground what is an otherwise fantastical world. Another great example of this is in the episode Houses of the Holy from season 2. Sam and Dean are brought to a town that looks like it's under the watch of a guardian angel, and Sam is open to the idea, fully expecting them to be dealing with an angel, even suspecting it might be Michael himself, only for it to come crashing down once it's revealed that it's simply the ghost of a priest taking his anger out and killing people who have done wrong. Once again, it's a very real storyline about somebody weaponizing religion. This time it's somebody using their own place in the church to take vengeance, when vengeance is not theirs to give. It's a powerful episode, and once again one that goes to great lengths to highlight the divide between Sam and Dean. While Sam might have been confident in it being an angel, Dean never once even considered it, always figuring that it had to be somebody taking advantage of that religion. Which is why that divide becomes even more interesting and apparent in seasons 4 and 5, especially season 4. The season where Sam is told his faith means nothing. One of my favorite elements in the first 5 seasons, though, is how the show parallels Sam and Dean in their own placement with religion. In season 4, angels make their grand entrance into the show, and despite going through all of seasons 1 through 3 as a devout believer in God, probably the only one on the show, once angels finally make themselves known to the Winchesters, they immediately inform Sam that he is not the one they came for. It's Dean, the guy that has always been critical of Sam's belief in God, the one who got through and coped by believing a God being out there meant a cruel God that let bad things happen to good people. I think that, ultimately, is one of the most fascinating elements that the show plays with. Both Sam and Dean's beliefs and thought processes make sense. Dean believes that God can't exist, as his powers prove that he doesn't really care. Sure, they hunt monsters and demons and such, but people still die. These creatures were created by something, and if it's a god, then he wants people to die. It's one of the very real struggles people have with their faith, and it's something I've oftentimes found myself thinking about. Sam uses that faith and belief in God as a way to get through what they do. He believes that if all this evil exists out there, a true and ultimate good must also exist to counteract it. There must be balance. And so in his mind, God must exist. Just because the bad things happen doesn't mean God wills them to, because God also wills good things to happen just as much. These are two sides to the same, very real coin. These are rational and understandable ways to approach this situation, and we all probably know at least one person in our lives who shares each perspective. That's what makes Sam's character all the more interesting throughout a season 4. He's routinely tested, hurt, and betrayed. He's excited to meet his very first angel. He mentions he prays to them often, and the first thing Castiel says to him is,
"Sam Winchester, the boy with the demon blood."
And his heart shatters. So it makes sense why his faith is tested. He's manipulated by those around him, and it leads to him being a willing participant in starting the apocalypse. You would think this is the end of the road for Sam, but it's interesting that the temptation he faces is met with resistance by him up until the end. It's not until his brother seemingly shuts him out, even though we know it's manipulation, that he finally gives in to those around him. And then the season 5 finale only reinforces his faith. Even if it's faith in his family, his brother, and himself to get it done, he also places his faith back in God, one last time to take the power to stop Lucifer. Eric Kripke's run of the show handles religion and faith probably the most grounded and realistically of any of the showrunners. It's used as a character trait and a character vehicle to tell stories in. Yes, there are huge biblical and cosmic characters, but they're all used to tell the story of Sam and Dean. How the two of them feel about God is just as deeply rooted in them as how they feel about their father. You could even argue Sam's longing for God and finding faith is rooted in his lack of a father figure, John. At the end of the day, Supernatural is a show that uses grand and cosmic figures to tell a small and human story. You can see more of that in my review of the season 5 finale. So then, is Eric Kripke anti-religion? I don't know, but I don't think so. He tests faith, he works with the material that the Bible can provide, but I do think he's coming at it from a more neutral angle than negative or positive. He's pointing out that faith can endure and should endure. Sam's faith is tested multiple times, but he moves through and past it, growing stronger. Even when faith is tested, you can always endure. It's not the test that matters, but how you respond. And what about that second point I mentioned, free will? I think that goes right alongside the stories of faith told by Kripke in this era. Pretty much everything in the first 5 seasons is dedicated entirely to prophecies and how things should be. So when Sam eventually breaks the prophecy and exercises his free will, it's an important character moment. It's a core theme to the show. They called themselves Team Free Will anyways. These characters have the free will to endure, to survive, and to make their own choices about what they believe in. Okay, so Eric Kripke's usage of faith boils down to the testing and endurance of faith. He uses religion as a way to tell the story in a realistically and grounded way, while also giving the characters real struggles that we all face in everyday life. So how do other showrunners go about it? We're gonna move past Sarah Gamble, no disrespect obviously, she just focused more on monsters here than religion, and it feels overshadowed. Which is fine, I think it worked for that era. But that leaves us with the third showrunner, Jeremy Carver. Now, I'm no stranger to poking fun at and lobbing criticism at Jeremy Carver, but I have to admit, the way he tackles faith and religion is very, very interesting. You see, I neglected to mention it during the Kripke section, but another massive fundamental element of those years is that God is missing. He's left, he's abandoned them. So the show decides to go one step further. Remember how I said Sam's belief in God could be a response to the lack of a father figure in John? Yeah, so the show knows that. You know how it was very clear that Michael and Lucifer were parallels for Sam and Dean? Yeah, the show gets that. It goes even further. Every single piece of the show now uses religion and faith as a springboard for allegorical character drama. Cain and Abel is mentioned very often throughout these seasons. I mean, Dean even meets Cain and bears his mark for the better part of 2 seasons. Throughout these years, the show has seemingly put aside religious character beats and instead using it as a building block for its stories. It's a direction I find interesting, as it's more metatextual than it is character-driven. Sam and Dean have to kill each other because it's what Cain and Abel did. It's not always working as well as it should. In fact, it can oftentimes feel hokey how often he slips into that idea that Sam or Dean have to die. The show eventually returns to Kripke-era storytelling that I enjoyed a lot, with season 11. It's often considered a retread of seasons 4 and 5, and you can see that with Sam's character arc. Here he is, once again praying to a god. It's the only way he can find direction forward. Dean chastises him for it again, but he continues to do it, thinking he's getting answers throughout the season, only for it to be Lucifer manipulating him. His faith is toyed with and tested, and he's yet again shown that God isn't listening to him. God doesn't care about his pleas. God doesn't want Sam Winchester. And yet when the fog settles and Sam meets him for the first time, he's ecstatic. His faith never wavered. The show has also transferred away from the mystery of God here. Obviously, since they fully introduce him as a character, but then they also introduce heaven as a tangible place. Late in season 11, the show takes a transition that it will maintain throughout the remainder of the show, and I think that's the transition from taking biblical beings as allegories and actually treating them like people. It goes one step further from what everything Carver was setting up and doing and turning them into actual characters. Take a look at the final 4 or so episodes of season 11 and they act and talk like a real family. Some have taken issue with this, some feel that it's blasphemous, and I think it definitely could be argued that it is, and some just think that it devalues the characters. I quite enjoy it. Seeing Sam and Dean having to be mediators between a family dispute between God and the devil is fucking captivating to me. But I think the episode where this shines the most is season 11, episode 20, Don't Call Me Shurley. Chuck is planning to give in to the darkness. He's taken a step back from guiding humans. He's decided he was too hands-on in the beginning and wanted to let them brave their own path. In doing so, he became appalled and devastated by what humanity made, but also knowledgeable that it was their choice. Metatron points out that people fought wars in his name, and Chuck's response is, "I didn't ask anyone to do that." Ultimately, he decides to stop hiding from the darkness and battle it in the light to save his creations, and I think that's awesome. I think that's fantastic, and I think it actually is one of the real benefits of making God a character, a tangible character that Sam and Dean can interact with, even going right down to the allegory again of Chuck being a stand-in for their father. He's doing what Sam and Dean's dad never did. He's coming back, apologizing, and taking an active presence in his children's lives. He even says just that.
I know you had a complicated upbringing, Dean. But don't confuse me with your dad.
Okay, so take everything I just said and throw it out the window because God is evil now, I guess. Andrew Dabb's run of the show is probably the most contentious run of seasons, not only in terms of quality of episodes, but also in how it handles religion. It doesn't start particularly different from the Carver era though. In fact, it doesn't really do much with the concept in general. Now don't get me wrong, biblical elements are clearly at the forefront. I mean, the main plot of these seasons is Jack Klein, the literal Antichrist, but it felt like the era with the least amount of new ideas as far as religion goes. It continues the ideas of Carver by utilizing the religious figures as living, breathing characters until the very, very end. Yeah, I'll be focusing entirely on season 15 here. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good to talk about when it comes to thematic elements in these seasons. I could write for hours about the nature versus nurture storyline with Jack and the boys, but I'm here to talk about faith. And the question that started my whole writing was one that I had in the back of my head the entire time when talking about this show with people. Is Andrew Dabb anti-Christian? I think so. Andrew Dabb goes the furthest of any showrunners when it comes to representing faith and religion, when it comes to what the show has to say about it. So like I said, God is evil now. In the final moments of season 14, God reveals he's just a writer who likes making his characters jump through hoops. Everything he's done has been for his own entertainment. Well, what about Don't Call Me Shurley? Well, forget about it. Andrew Dabb did. God is no longer a character, he's a self-insert. It's taking Eric Kripke's initial idea for Chuck and expanding it further, taking it to its absolute limit. The writers like fucking with Sam and Dean, so Chuck likes fucking with Sam and Dean. Now, I inherently dislike this change of course. It flies in the face of the incredible season 11 moments, it comes out of nowhere, and ultimately never goes anywhere good enough to justify its inclusion. I think turning Chuck into an antagonist is a fascinating idea, but it's not executed well enough even if we do get some awesome things from it. One of those things has to go back to Sam. Remember how he was constantly let down by his faith? Every time he put his faith in God to steer him straight, he was manipulated, tossed aside, and downright abused. But how he always came out on the other side faith untested? Yeah, the first person to ever kick the fire out of Sam Winchester is God himself. And that's cool. That's really cool from a writing standpoint. Sam is the one to stand up to God in the season 14 finale, take a shot at him, and is then connected, viewing God's different endings through his own twisted nightmares. That's so cool, only for God to realize the only way to do it is to kick the shit out of and ruin the hope of the one person that put their faith in him. More than Castiel, an actual angel of the Lord, Sam believed the most, and he gets it beat out of him. And I think this is the part where it gets very hard not to paint Andrew Dabb as anti-Christian. He goes out of his way to villainize God, who is clearly the Christian God, and goes even further to have the one singularly religious character on the show have his faith literally beat out of him by his own God. And then, at the end of the show, in their last-ditch effort to defeat them, Sam and Dean utilize Jack, the Antichrist, to absorb God's powers and take over as the new God, leaving the old one as a shriveled, powerless, and egotistical man. I'm sorry. Best case scenario, Andrew Dabb doesn't care about Christianity and religion and is just going for an old power reversal story. And worst case scenario, he hates the religion. And I'm not here to tell you which is right or which is wrong. Hell, I think the ending works. I think it's good, but it says a lot about the show and how it portrays its own beliefs, especially in contrast to what came before. But if you need more convincing, then fine. Take this line from Lucifer himself.
Well, that's a good thing, because the man had no love to give. Not to you, not to me, not to humanity. You see that now, right?
Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, you can't use the line from Lucifer. He's the devil. Of course he hates God, but really take a step back and think about it. The writer behind that line, the ideas behind that line. Take that line in the context with everything else we see in season 15. And how can you interpret that in any other way? You can go as far as to say that turning God into a villain is just a story stroke. It makes sense. He's the monster at the end of the book. But this line, this one single moment from Lucifer, wholly embodies, I think, the exact thought process behind this show at the very end. God had no love to give. Granted, I don't think Andrew Dabb is anti-religion as a whole. The final moments of the show portray Jack as a unified force amongst people. It takes the concept of a god and places it into the people's hands. And I think that's a very fitting ending for the show. Supernatural, at the end of it, doesn't want you to not have faith. It just doesn't want you to have faith in God. Okay, but wait, hear me out. I gotta come back for one last moment. What if it was never about God to begin with? Sam's faith, that driving force that carried him through literal hell and back, wasn't just about a higher power, it was hope. I mentioned it before. It's hope in his friends and family. It was about believing something out there could make the pain mean something. But look at where that faith actually rooted. Look at how it evolved. His strength in the season 5 finale, that wasn't God, that was Dean. That was memory, family, and connection. The moment where he rejects Lucifer in season 11, it's not divine intervention. It's his belief that Dean and Castiel will find a way to bring him back. And in season 15, after God himself beat the faith out of him and shattered the last fragile thread of spiritual belief Sam had left, he still stood up, he still fought, and he put the power in himself, his family, and Jack. Even when the supposed creator of the universe gave him every reason not to, he still had faith. So yes, Andrew Dabb might be anti-Christian, and Eric Kripke might have had conflicting views about it, and Jeremy Carver really likes writing metaphors with biblical characters. But maybe Supernatural was never about faith in God. At the end of the day, it's the show that coined the term family don't end in blood, and it don't start there either. I think it has everything to do with learning about the power and faith in each other and yourself, and that it's even stronger. I think no matter what the show has to say about religion, it is a show about the belief in your family, and it is about the belief in yourself. And I think that's the whole damn point.